meetings is not practical. As a result, this meeting will be conducted under Minnesota Statute 13D-021, meetings by telephone or other electronic means.
I will do a roll call of all the commissioners and ask them to acknowledge they can hear us. Marie, can you hear us?
I can now.
Okay, good. Terry?
Good morning.
Morning.
Denny?
I'm present and hearing.
And Jack?
Yes, good morning.
Morning, Jack. Okay, well, thank you. All the votes will be done by roll call because of the circumstances we're in. Could I have a motion for approving the agenda?
And Mr. Chair, just a couple announcements on the agenda. I did send out an addition for the Drainage Authority to add the legal services agreement to the Drainage Authority agenda. And then Mandy and I would like to remove the comprehensive plan adoption from the agenda today. We want to change some of the wording on the adopting resolution. So we'll just bring that forward at the January 5th meeting.
I'll move the agenda as amended.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
On the consent agenda, would we be asking to at least remove one of those items, or would that be on the next item?
We'll wait. We'll typically remove those once we get to the consent agenda.
I do have a
ask
question.
for commissioners to remove it.
I do have a question about number 7 there when we get there.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Kemp,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Lars,
Yes,
Drano,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes, passes. Okay, now Ryan has a little speech about our employee recognition.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Each year, the county board's December meeting, the board recognizes employees' years of service milestone anniversaries that occur in that current calendar year. Due to the pandemic, the recognition is being handled a little differently this year. We've invited those staff being recognized to attend the meeting by Zoom, and I see several on the screen here. Staff will have their names and years of service acknowledged here today, and then outside of the meeting, they'll still receive a certificate and recognition award. So I will turn it over to Jamie. She's going to go through the list and recognize our staff that are at milestone anniversaries.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board and staff. I'm going to name off each of our individuals this year that have some milestone services.
You should mute us, Ryan.
Starting with 5 years of service. We have Jody Fishnick, Chris Vernscheid, Kayla Giefer, and Taylor Volk. With 10 years of service, we have Patsy Grove, Jamie Hafner, and Darius Steen. With 15 years of service, Harry Arndt, Al Christensen, Darcy Hoffman, Heidi Hoke, Christy Kitts, Molly Klingerman, and Greg Whitty. With 20 years of service, Justin Block, Wayne Bach, and Deanna Ruffing. And finally, with 25 years of service, we have Mark Chatterton, Laura Davis, Michelle Wills, Keith Wills, and Michelle Zender-Fisher. 2020, this equates to 22 employees with a total of 340 years of service. I will turn it back over to Chair Lipke and the board if they would like to offer any congratulatory words. Thank you.
Well, I would like to congratulate all of you and thank you for your service, and hope a lot of you are here again in 5 years and 10 years and 20 years, or happily retired. Any other comments from any other commissioners?
Well, John, this is Terry. Just in light of what the county and the country has gone through in the last 9 months, thank you all so much. Now more than ever, we've really needed you, and the folks in Nicollet County, I'm sure, appreciate everything you're doing.
Mr. Chair, I would echo that. We are grateful for your service, your continued service to Nicollet County, and we thank you.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, this is Denny.
Yes, Denny.
Again, I am very proud to be able to serve with all of you that are listed here and those that are somewhere in between these milestones. We're very proud of the work you do, and I am honored to have some ability to work with you and make our county some place to be proud of. So thank you all very much.
Mr. Chair, do I get to be last? My only, thank you all. Be well, be safe.
All
right, thank you.
Okay, we'll move to the consent agenda without number 7.
Is there any other?
Any other removals?
Mr.
I'll
Chair,
move the consent agenda, absent number 7.
I'll second
And we-
Terry's motion.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda except for number 7. Any discussion?
And I would recommend, Mr. Chair, we put that under Health and Human Services, as that's an agreement between the county attorney's office and Health and Human Services. So we'll add that as number 3.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, that's fine. I just want to be able to visit with those involved to see if they're satisfied with the work in this past year. So if the county attorney and others could be ready to answer that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Any more discussion? Otherwise, we'll call for the roll on approving the consent agenda. Roll call, I should say.
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes.
Drano,
Yeah, yes.
Kolar,
Yes,
Morrow,
Yes.
Passes. Okay, Health and Human Service.
Ask for public appearances.
Oh, sorry. Is there any public appearances today?
Look like it.
There are none in the.
Kind of hard to tell from here. Okay, we'll move on to Health and Human Services. Is that Cassie, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay, Cassie?
Good
Morning.
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 My first item on the agenda today is a proclamation for County, City, Tribal, and State Health and Human Services Worker Day. This was actually shared with yourself, Mr. Chair, ahead of time as the governor made this proclamation in between board meetings, and we wanted to have this signed into our staff members by the date of December 9th. But looking for formal adoption today. Would you prefer that I read the document? Yes, okay. Whereas county, city, tribal, and state health and human services workers are dedicated to improving health, protecting the vulnerable, and providing outstanding public services to the people of Minnesota through their prevention efforts, administration of programs, and provision of services. And whereas county, city, tribal, and state health and human services workers are responsible for the prudent expenditure of millions of dollars annually and must meet the highest standards of job performance in program and services delivery. And whereas the nature of federal and state legislation necessitates that county, city, tribal, and state health and human services workers continually expand their knowledge, skills, and expertise related to their professions and the needs of the communities they serve. And whereas Nicollet County recognizes the valuable public services that county, city, tribal, and state health and human services workers perform each and every day for the health, prevention, and protection of Minnesotans. Now therefore be it resolved that the Nicollet County Board of Commissioners proclaim Wednesday, December 9th as County, City, Tribal, and State Health and Human Services Worker Day.
Mr. Chair, I'll move adoption of the resolution.
Temple second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Morrow,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Kolar,
yes,
Drano,
Yes,
Lipke,
Yes. Passes.
Thank you.
Cassie, you have another item for us.
I do. My next item is just an update on the COVID-19 situation as it relates to case investigation and vaccination. For case investigation, as of yesterday, we have 1,913 total cases in Nicollet County with 76 active cases. Our number of cases has decreased over the course of the last 2 weeks. It's important to note that while our numbers are decreasing, they do remain high, and testing is low statewide right now. In terms of trends in this area, we're seeing a lot of household contacts, ongoing social gatherings, workplaces, largely where people are attending work while symptomatic, more recently for up to 5 days at a time, increasing the number of people exposed, and congregate living settings such as group homes and some of our larger facilities. With our additional 3 deaths in the last week, we are currently at 30 deaths total in Nicollet County. We are experiencing lately, probably the last 2 weeks, a significant decrease in the number of people who are answering their phones for our case investigation and contact tracing team, as well as the number of people who will not fully participate in the interview. So we're getting a lot of people who will answer their phone. They'll maybe describe their own symptoms and what's been happening, but they won't share their employer, their contacts, or the school that their family members attend. So this is making it really difficult for contact tracing to remain valuable and provides a false sense of security to the community, to workplaces, and to schools who are really relying on that information to make some important decisions in our communities. We will be putting together a video to share on social media and with community partners, and it will feature every one of our case investigation and contact tracing team members at various sites throughout the community, really emphasizing that we're local, we're in your community, we're not gathering data on you, we just are caring about the health of our community members, and information is only used for that purpose. Lastly, related to the case investigation, MDH did change the quarantine guidelines last week so that the 14-day quarantine can be lessened when needed, although the 14-day quarantine itself is still the most safe and recommended. We are seeing that many workplaces around the county are not adapting the decreased quarantine period. They are remaining with the 14 days. And it's just a note that the 14 days decrease to the 7 or 10 does not apply for household contacts, healthcare workers, or corrections workers. So when we're doing case investigation, we've had very few recommendations for that decrease because a lot of those contacts work in one of those fields or are within the home. Any questions regarding case investigation or contact tracing?
I have one question, Cassie, if I may.
Sure.
We see an overall decline in reported cases that are coming into our contact tracing group. Where have we seen those numbers shift? I recognize you're taking up more time because you're getting non-responses, but has the overall flow rate been about the same, or are we seeing a corner turn here a little bit?
We have seen a decrease in the numbers in the last 2 weeks in total. Some of that we would attribute to the less interactions related to schools and sports, as well as many fewer cases on the Gustavus campus. They're doing very regular testing and monitoring up there. We do worry that there's just a general lack of testing. It is down statewide, and there's speculation, that could have to do with less incentive for testing while schools are not open. Perhaps people not necessarily wanting to know the results ahead of the holidays because there are a lot of holiday plans being made. And hopefully it's because, there's less interaction and less cases in general.
Thank you.
Brian, can you? Okay. Cassie, we originally had plans for doing some testing in the west end of the county. Did that fall by the wayside as you guys got busier?
It hasn't fallen by the wayside. We have actually been discussing it quite regularly. The issue is right now, most of our resources will be funneled towards vaccination, or at least getting those initial plans put together. We were considering maybe a testing site in Lafayette to be at the end of January with the saliva testing. The issue is just needing to make sure that everybody coming can register and has the technology needed to participate. So we are evaluating that, and we do plan to make sure something gets set up in the western end of the county.
Okay. Another question, do you know, I mean, is there a hot spot in the county, or, you know, Nicollet County and Lafayette, St. Peter, North Mankato? Where's the worst spot? Where's the best?
Well, I guess what I could look at is just our zip code level data, which is telling us that it is more St. Peter and some of our rural communities that are a little bit smaller, as opposed to North Mankato, where the testing or where the positive cases are down some.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Terry's got a question.
More questions, Terry?
Well, thank you, John, and thank you, Cassie. I want to make sure that, especially as we go into the holidays or continue the holiday season, that we express our gratitude to you and to your team for your hard work. And I'd like to just reinforce, if I might, John, a couple of messages that Cassie has shared. You know, I am happy that the county has been able to do what we can to help businesses and to help individuals. And given the legislature's action yesterday, I anticipate that we'll be able to even help businesses and folks in Nicollet County even more. And at the same time, I would encourage folks in Nicollet County to support our efforts to help our community stay safe and healthy. It helps us end this pandemic if folks share information with you that helps keep everyone safe and healthy. It helps our community when people wear masks when they're out in public. It helps our community to socially distance. And we bring this thing to a closer end if we follow Cassie's advice. I almost want to say, what would Cassie do? And then make that our decision point. So I just think it's important to emphasize, I know it's going to be a challenge during the holiday season to follow health and safety protocols. I'm just encouraging everyone to do it so that we can bring this to an end.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else?
I have a question for Cassie. Cassie, could you walk us through a quarantine situation? And I'm going to use my own example. I had a roommate not test positive, but get exposed Wednesday at her chiropractor appointment. So what would be the guidelines for the rest of the members of the household?
Well, I mean, so technically it would be the roommate who was exposed. So for the rest of the members of the household, the quarantine wouldn't really expand to you at that point. We do encourage, though, people who are members of the household to stay home as much as possible, even though they're not technically being quarantined at that point. However, if the roommate was to test positive, then the quarantine would apply. And because it would be a household contact, it would be the full 14 days starting the day after the last exposure. Where it gets possible to lessen the quarantine would be, for instance, in this person's situation where they were exposed in the community, you know, in a one-time setting, they know when it happened. They could wait 5 full days and test, and then they would only need to quarantine for 7 days, or they could just wait 10 full days having no symptoms and end quarantine.
Are testing results coming back faster? We were tested yesterday. And they told us 24 to 72 hours, which kind of surprised me. I thought that was kind of quick.
Was that at Gander Mountain?
No, that was at Mayo.
Okay, yep, and so those have been coming back much more quickly than they were before. Gander Mountain, we're actually seeing results back sometimes within the first 24 hours. So they're definitely much more helpful so that people know whether the rest of the household needs to quarantine or what needs to happen.
That would be good. Thank you.
Terry, you have another question?
Well, just Cassie, could you say a little bit more about the testing availability at Gander Mountain?
So Gander Mountain still has that free saliva testing going on. You can register online so that you have an idea of the time, but they also accept walk-ins. You just have to go and register using like their iPads there. It's a saliva-based test, but then the results are coming back within 1 to 2 days. More recently, 1 day. And then our Hy-Vee locations continue to offer free testing as well, which is a nasal swab that the person driving through the pharmacy actually does themselves and then puts in a vial in a box to be picked up. And that has a little bit of a slower return time.
So do they tell you if you maybe had it 3 months ago and recovered? You have the
They
antibodies?
do not.
Okay.
That would be a separate antibody test, whereas these are antigen and PCR tests.
Thank you. More questions?
Cassie, did you have anything else on vaccine or?
Yes, I do have a vaccination update then as well. Thank you. So as some of you probably know, the Pfizer Ultra Cold vaccine was approved for emergency use. It will be distributed first to hospitals and given to personnel working with COVID-19 dedicated spaces and emergencies. Our region expects the vaccine to ship to Mayo Health Systems and the Newell Medical Center yet this week, and for vaccination to start on December 21st. Moderna, the vaccine is right behind, and we should hear approval any day. And this one will be used for the long-term care, starting with skilled nursing facilities, EMS, COVID testers, and COVID community vaccinators. Using the CDC guidance, MDH has released their interim allocation and prioritization plan. Phase 1A is what we just talked about, the healthcare workers working directly with COVID-19, EMS, and those COVID testers and vaccinators. Our next phase of priority is all hospital staff members, assisted living, urgent care, and dialysis centers. And then the last priority for phase 1A is all remaining healthcare personnel not in those categories, so including places like home health care, shelters, dentists, pharmacies, mental health, and group homes, as well as the residents living in those areas. At our last board meeting, I had shared that local public health would have a role in vaccinating long-term care staff members. At this point, that has changed, and the Thrifty White Pharmacy now has capacity to vaccinate residents and staff members at all of the long-term care facilities in our area. Our public health nurse, Kate, is working very closely with them to make sure that they do have capacity for things to be done timely so that she can offer assistance and our team can become more involved if needed. We believe that our next role related to priority 1A will be EMS, community testers, and community vaccinators. So we're currently working with local partners to identify where our help will be the most needed. And an update on the funding related to this, we have received approximately $15,000 from the Minnesota Department of Health for staff time and purchases needed for vaccination. Any questions on vaccination?
Yes, if I may, are you having adequate access for this to the supplies needed to do this dissemination? Has that product, there was some earlier discussion about availability, and I'm assuming it's on track, but just wanting to know that.
At this point, my understanding is that it's on track. We've been sent pretty lengthy descriptions of all of the supplies that will be distributed to us.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions for Cassie? Thank you, Cassie. We all appreciate what you're doing, and it has to be a really stressful time for you and your staff. And we hope you have a Merry Christmas. Brian, we're going to move with the number 7.
Yeah, we're gonna move, we moved to consent agenda number 7, Welfare Fraud Cooperative Agreement for 2021 and 2022 to this item. I believe Michelle submitted this agenda item, but it involves Human Services as well. And Commissioner Kohlers, I think you had a question.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. So the question that I would have for both Michelle and for Cassie, this had been certainly something that was a bit controversial a few years ago. Are we, when I say we, are you and your departments satisfied with the work that is being done by these folks who are doing that work?
Mr. Chair, I'll defer first to Cassie to answer that question as we are responsive to what the welfare fraud investigator reports, and the financial services unit is reporting for cases and work together cooperatively. So I'll defer first to Cassie.
Yes, I would say that our department is very satisfied with the work being done in this area. We feel we have strong relationships as well as a clear process for referrals and follow-up.
Mr. Chair, I see Sheriff Lang is also on the meeting. He indicated to me his audio may not be working, but the fraud investigator is a sheriff's employee, so I don't know if Sheriff Lang has any comments.
Go ahead, Dave, if you can talk.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
All right. Yeah, I don't have anything to input here other than I know Jay, who is the investigator that works with this program, extremely busy. Never short on work to do. And my understanding works pretty well. Financial efforts.
You get much of that, Ryan?
Oh, you cut out a little bit, Dave, there, so we'll just move on unless there's any other comments. But I know that Dave provides statistics each year for the fraud investigator program, so I'm sure those will be available here soon for 2020. So,
Okay, back to Cassie.
well, we would need a motion on approving this agreement then.
Is there a
Mr.
motion?
Mr. Chair, I think Michelle was going to respond after Cassie. Was there something you needed to share with us, Michelle?
Thank you, Commissioner Kemp. I would just reiterate that I think as the program has grown in terms of being refined as we respond to each new circumstance that comes up, and certainly COVID has presented additional challenges, that I'm very pleased with the working relationship, both with Jay, the investigator, as well as Cassie's staff, to have open communication about how we're proceeding with those cases and what are the appropriate resolutions in each of those cases. Again, with the goal really being to ensure that funding is given to those that are entitled to receive that funding, because as we have discovered, the need is great and the resources are limited. And so we want to just make sure that we're continuing to assess that we're responding appropriately to those that are entitled to receive those services, and finding ways to help those that might not be entitled to receive those services in an appropriate manner. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, just in follow up on what Cassie and what Michelle said, the word fraud in this country has become somewhat fraudulent in the past year. So I just wanted to make sure that we are satisfied with the work that is being done, and that both departments, including the sheriff's office, I'm curious to see what the numbers look like during this COVID year.
Mr. Chair, I'd move the agreement, authorization of the agreement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Reynolds, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chair, in no way was I in any way trying to impugn the dignity of what's going on in that department. I just wanted to call into question to see if everyone is satisfied with the way it's being handled. And I thank Michelle and Cassie and the sheriff for their testimony to that.
Thank you, Jack. And I guess I'll just add, I agree with Ryan that just having this probably takes away some temptation. We avoid some troubles. So, call the roll, please.
Kemp,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes.
Polars,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Drano.
Yes.
Is that everybody? Must be. It passes. Thank you. On to human resources.
We have Jamie up for a public hearing to set the 2021 fee schedule. Good morning, Jamie.
Hey, Jamie.
Good morning. Good morning again, Mr. Chair, and members of the board. Each year in December, we propose some changes to our fee schedule. The fee schedule is included in your packet. Department heads provide feedback on any changes that they would like to make. This year, we have two very minimal changes. One is in the Public Services Department. We're adding a notarizing services fee of $1. And then the second change is under probation, increasing the local correctional fee from $175 per year to $200 per year. And just to note, that change actually does not take effect until 7/21 of 2021.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Jamie?
Mr. Chair, this officially is a public hearing that was noticed in the newspaper, so you should call the public hearing open to see if there's any comments.
Are there any comments from the public? Any comments from the public? Okay, any questions for Jamie? Comments? Well, I'll make a comment. I don't have any problem with what you're talking about this year, but I think in the past we've gotten the price of these hearings a little expensive, but it's in there now. So I guess, do we need a motion at all?
Yeah, I would just add on the, and Mandy's on the meeting here, on our hearing cost, I think you're talking about planning and zoning.
Yes.
I believe we still are subsidizing some of the cost of actually conducting those hearings,
Okay.
even at the fees that we're at. And Mandy, can you clarify that? Is that correct?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Yep, we actually subsidize the hearing fees significantly. Every couple of years we increase them, so the applicant doesn't have a significant jump each year, but we are significantly, the county significantly subsidizing the cost. Just to kind of give you an idea, it's a little over $1,000 to run one public hearing with it. So $400 is pretty low at this point, but every couple of years we do increase them so we don't have that big jump.
Well, some of the hearings are $1,000 though, right?
Correct. Those are the hearings that are after the fact, and they're paying the true cost of a hearing.
Okay. Terry, you had a question?
Well, just two really quick ones. One, Mandy, to follow up on what you're saying, what's involved in the cost of a hearing? So let me just start with that one.
Sure. So everything is laid out in statute, how we proceed with a hearing. Approximately 10 days prior to a hearing, we are required to notify property owners within a quarter of a mile or 10 or more property owners. And then we also have to put it in the paper. It's all the staff time that goes into preparing the staff report and the site visit, mileage, all of those type of staff related items. And then also that includes the per diem costs and the mileage for our planning and zoning advisory commission or the Board of Adjustment and Appeals with it. So all those costs come up to that little over $1,000.
Well,
I don't doubt that at all. Just that it's $1,000 is a lot of money for some people, for a lot of people. So go ahead, Terry.
My second point was, as I looked at our fees, I was intrigued by the premarital education discount for marriage licenses. And so I went and looked it up and found that it's in statute, which leads me, Jamie, to say that a number of our fees, I have to imagine, even if they're not subsidized, they may be in statute. And we're just following statute with the fee that we've imposed. Is that a fair generalization?
Yes, I would say many of them are in statute. Those that are not, and we have some discretion on, I know our department heads usually reach out to their counterparts just to see where we're at in comparison as well.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I may have missed this, but I just want to ask Jamie, there was no public comment received at all after the publication, correct?
Correct, no public comment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the resolution as attached in the packet for adoption.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Terry.
Terry seconded. Any more discussion?
Might want to close the public hearing, Mr. Chair.
Okay, could we close the public hearing? Now, any more discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Kemp,
Yes.
Commissioner Morrow,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes.
Kolars,
Yes.
Passes. Thank you. Seth, I think you're up.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board and staff. First item I have is for the board to consider final payment for our 2020 highway striping project. This is an annual project that we undertake where we restripe a portion of the county's paved road system. And so I'm asking the board today to approve final payment in the amount of $9,346.29 to Traffic Marking Services for the 2020 highway striping project.
Any questions for Seth, or do you have a motion?
Temple move it.
Motion
Morrow second.
and a second. And more discussion? Call the roll, please.
Lipke,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
Kolars,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Passes. Seth, you have number 2 here.
Yes, my next item is to consider final acceptance for the Government Center parking lot project. As you know, this project built a brand new parking lot on the east side of the campus. We have received all the final documents from the contractor, Minnesota Paving and Materials. Like the previous item I had, typically I'm asking for the board to release a final payment to the contractor, but it was discovered that there was incorrect quantity put in and the contractor was overpaid. And so we have received a check for the overpayment. And so now the board can go ahead and consider final acceptance of the project. The amount returned to the county from the contractor was $2,225.53.
Questions for Seth or a
Seth,
motion?
are you recommending acceptance of the project?
Yes, I'm recommending that the board accept the parking lot project. Yep.
And Seth, everybody's pretty happy with the way it turned out?
I haven't gotten any negative comments up there. I don't know, Ryan, maybe Ryan wants to comment on comments that he's received.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Staff have really enjoyed the safety provided by the parking lot of being able to park off street. As we know, Front Street's a heavily traveled and a lot of traffic on there is very fast as well. So it's really provided a lot of safety, and I like the fact that we're no longer parking in front of people's homes like we were, to give them a little more privacy and opportunity to park as well. And the flashing lights as well for the crosswalk has worked out very well. Once in a while we see somebody pull through them, but by and large people are following that, and it's really provided a lot of safety. So it's so far so good. We'll see how things go through the first winter, and hopefully we don't get the heaving that we've had in some of our other parking lots, but I have high hopes that this one's going to turn out much better.
Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, does someone have a motion?
Kemp made the motion for acceptance.
Morrow second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Kemp,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes.
Kolars,
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
More into Public Works, and this will be kind of a joint effort. Heather, I'll let you present it as you submitted the agenda item. Seth may have some comments.
Okay. Go ahead, Heather.
Good morning, members of the board and staff. I am bringing an agenda item today for a motion for approval of committing funds for the Road and Bridge Fund. Give you some background, just kind of reading through probably from the agenda item here. In 2020, the county received funds for Trunk Highway 14 turnback agreements totaling $3,053,000. These funds that the county and MnDOT agreed to back in May of 2015 as compensation to repair two old segments of Trunk Highway 14 that were turned back to the county when Trunk Highway 14 was expanded and rerouted past North Mankato and Nicollet. These MnDOT agreements were approved at board on May 26, 2015. These funds are not restricted, however, they will be needed for these roads in the future. So following GASB 54 and our Nicollet County fund balance policy, committed funds are amounts that can be used only for specific purposes determined by formal action of the government's highest level of decision-making authority. And I attached the Nicollet County policy for reference. We would request a motion to commit these funds on the 2020 financial statement to be spent in the future on Trunk Highway 14 road segment repairs, which are now CSA 6 and CSA 42. And Seth, I don't know if you have additional comments on the timing of that and the repairs.
No, we're essentially waiting for those to get all the life out of the pavements on those two segments, and then we will work on developing a project for rehabilitation of those segments. But that's, at this point, that's a little ways out at this time. I'd be more than happy to answer any other questions that board members may have, though.
Any questions for Seth?
I will just add, Mr. Chair, so the commitment of funds is a lower level than restricted. So what the board is essentially doing here is committing these funds for these intended purposes on the turn back. If there are leftover funds, the board would have the option then in the future to redelegate those funds to other areas.
Thank you, Ryan.
Chair, I'd move the resolution.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Right, call the roll, please.
Lipke,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Colars,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Kemp,
Yes.
It passes. Property services. Is this Mandy or?
This would be Mandy.
Okay. Mandy, are you still with us?
And members of the board, I have two items for your consideration on both the resolutions. I am requesting the removal of the item number 2, the comprehensive plan adoption resolution. I'll move that to the January 5th board meeting for consideration. I do have the first one is the ABMP low interest loan project. These are 2 loans that we issued over the last couple of months that we have finalized and received reimbursement. They are in the amount of $26,509. And I asked today for adoption of the resolution to place the lien attachment to the property.
Is there a motion?
Campbell move the resolution.
Drentel to second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Call the roll, please, Sarah.
Kemp,
Yes.
Kemp, Morrow,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Colars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes, passes. Thank you. You have another item, Mandy?
Other item I have is in regard to the 911 address special assessments for the hunting checks. This has been a project we've been working on the last 2 years. Last year we did adopt the amendment to the enhanced 911 numbering ordinance, and this was phase 2 of that project, where the combination with our GIS staff and the sheriff's department and the assessor's office, we went through and identified all the locations of the shacks and then made sure the shacks that were not properly addressed were assigned an address for emergency response. During that process, we also notified the individuals that they could come in and pick up their sign and also pay to avoid having this attachment to their property. We did 3 different notifications to those individuals, and we did have a conversation with a couple of the cluster developments, and they preferred that they actually receive a special assessment on the property. So what you have in your packet today is a resolution identifying the parcels with the amount, and then also the number of signs and posts provided for each parcel. You will notice the larger fees are related to the cluster developments. There is a total of 16 parcels that are going to receive a special assessment in the amount of $3,090. And so today I'm just asking for approval of the resolution for
Mostly
the special
Swan Lake.
assessment attachment.
Is there a motion?
Campbell, move it.
Morrow, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Call the roll, please.
Kemp,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Colars,
Yes.
Lipke.
Yes, passes. Thank you.
You.
Ryan, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First item today is the 2021 elected officials compensation and per diem resolution. Minnesota statute requires the county board to establish by resolution the salary and per diem rate for elected officials for the coming year. Proposed resolution I've included in the packet today includes a 2.5% wage increase for county commissioners, which is the same as the increase that was applied to the county's staff wage scale, and a 3.5% increase for our elected department heads, who are the county sheriff and county attorney. And that is an increase that is equal to what our department average increase is for salaries for 2021. And then the resolution also leaves the per diem rate at $70 per day, which is, as I mentioned, the same as 2020.
Any discussion? Any questions for Ryan?
Well, Mr. Chair, if I might,
Yes, Terry.
I'll start the conversation because I think this is going to be a matter of discussion, and I'll just speak from my own perspective. As some of you may already know, I have not accepted a pay raise in the time I've been on the board. I communicated that again with county administration earlier this month by signing a letter saying I wouldn't take a pay raise. I also informed county administration that I would not be accepting a chairperson stipend in the event that I become chair in 2021. Those are personal decisions on my part. I have shared with some my reasons for doing so in the past. And so I would just want the board to know I won't be accepting a pay raise or the chairperson pay in 2021.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else want to comment?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to agree with Commissioner Morrow on this. I think in light of the times and the struggles that some of our taxpayers are going through, that I too will forego any raise at this point.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, procedurally, would it be the intent to make, I'm not sure how to ask this question, but would be a preference on my fellow board members to leave the option of a choice for an increase, or would we prefer to fix that number? I was intending to propose that we just simply do not authorize a raise for the chair or for the board for 2021 and remain at the 2020 rate. But I'm willing to consider either. I'm just needing a sense of what people's inclinations are.
Terry, you got a question?
I do not. I was simply going to share the information with you, Denny, that in the past I've been using a county rule that allows a commissioner to forego pay raises. I just share that information.
In our operating guidelines and policies for the county board, there's a provision that allows individual county commissioners to opt out of pay increases. So Commissioner Morrow has been following that procedure.
Any other questions? Anybody want to make a motion, or are we just going to let it pass?
Well, Mr. Chair, if there is going to be a motion on item number 1, Again, I don't mean to be presumptive, but it's my understanding that the chairpersonship rotates from district to district on our board.
Yes.
I would be I would suggest removing the phrase in number 1, with the chairperson of the board receiving an additional $1,500 annually for duties related to that position. But if it's the board's preference that that language remain and I simply opt out, I'm fine with that too. We could do it either way, but I don't want it to be understood that I'll be taking the $1,500.
Thank you, Terry. Jack, you had a comment? No.
I'd like to move the resolution as presented, and I do have some comments.
Is there a second out there for Jack's motion?
I will second it for discussion purposes.
Thank you, Marie. Go ahead, Jack.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. With respect to Commissioner compensation, you could say that CEO means Chief Elected Officers of the county. And 2020, folks, has been one of the busiest years many of us have spent in our duties as county commissioners, what with the pandemic, the mess in Washington, budget concerns in Minnesota, and the future, quite frankly, looks to keep commissioners busier in serving our residents. This is more than a part-time job. We all come to our positions in different economic places. I understand what Terry is saying. I understand what others have talked about. But regarding compensation for commissioners, I would acknowledge members who may forego allowing a pay raise for the coming year or accepting one. But I don't agree that commissioners do not deserve a raise in pay similar to what other employees are getting. In fact, some might argue that the current compensation is too low. I won't go into what 0.5% of a $45 million budget adds up to, but it's over the current compensation. Now, if there are those who believe strongly in freezing salaries for 2021 and perhaps longer, as has been indicated, you may wish to not accept the small pay raise or donate that small increase to a charity of your choice. But to propose freezing commissioner salaries after this year of the pandemic and looking forward to what we're facing as county elected officials, CEOs, I cannot support anything that would do that. I believe my fellow commissioners deserve a raise and deserve to look at the idea of future compensation that's commensurate with typical CEO salaries, chief elected officer salaries. And I also believe that the $70 per diem rate should be moved to $75. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Jack. And I want to clarify a couple of things. My decision about pay raises has not been based upon my economic standing, but rather upon a personal commitment I've made really to myself to try to finish repaying the county for the special election costs of 2012. And I feel a moral obligation to do that, Jack. It's not based upon what my ability to have compensation or my economic security. It's really that moral position that I've imposed upon myself. For that reason, I don't take per diem either. I just feel I want to find ways to repay the taxpayers for something that occurred in 2012. I also would just note that I have no objection about the county attorney or county sheriff. I don't want to be misunderstood in my thoughts on this. I think that those should proceed. Jack, I agree with you. It is possible for a commissioner to simply not give themselves a pay raise if they choose to do so. That's why I brought up the guiding principle or the rule that Ryan mentioned earlier.
Harry, you have a better conscience than 99 out of 100 people, I would say. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair,
Okay. Yes, Michelle.
I appreciate the conversation. I'm not aware of a similar provision in the county. I have for county attorneys or the sheriff, but I have too struggled with the thought of taking a pay raise in light of the current circumstances of finances. And I don't know, and I didn't look at the provision. I was going to speak with Ryan after this meeting today about declining my salary increase as well. I apologize for not doing so before today, but I too would like to decline any type of increase and have my salary set for 2021 as it was for 2020. And I don't know if there's a similar provision in the county rules, but I concur with the discussion here regarding economic circumstances. Thank you.
Any more discussion, or I'll call for a vote?
I do have a question. Ryan, can you speak to that issue, or do we need to revisit that somewhere along the way as our county attorney brought up?
Well, in our policies and guidelines, there's nothing specific to the elected department heads, although I know that elected department heads in certain situations around the state have opted not to take a increase. It's their option. So Michelle can choose to do that if she so chooses.
Yes, Terry.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Ryan, if you find that for some reason we need a rule in order to allow the county attorney to follow the path she's just described, I hope you'll come back to us and say we need to do X in order to allow the county attorney to do that. And Michelle, I just want to say to you personally, I certainly respect your decision. I think you're in a different place. You are a professional who could go other places. Certainly the compensation of county attorney may or may not reflect what the market would bear if you were to take your skills and abilities and experience into the private market. Again, I respect what you're doing, but please don't feel I think that you should do it.
And Mr. Chair, thank you, Commissioner Morrow, for those comments. It is something that I, quite frankly, personally have struggled with in light of what I am seeing in my work for the struggles of our citizens here in Nicollet County. And quite frankly, the discussion helped me to articulate those concerns in this format. And it is actually something I've been considering for quite a while. And so thank you.
Anyone else? Brian, you have a comment or not?
So we have a motion to accept the resolution as presented. I would recommend we accept it as presented, and then those individuals who are part of this resolution can follow procedures with me afterwards to decline their increases if they so choose, like I've done with Commissioner Morrow already, because the board has to act on this before January 1st. So this is our last chance. So again, I would move ahead with calling the question on this resolution, and then individuals could make decisions after that.
Mr. Chair.
Where's that coming from?
Well, I think that's coming from Amy, but if I might, I agree with you, Ryan. I plan to vote yes on the resolution with that understanding. If for any reason we have to fix this, we could always hold an emergency meeting between now and the 1st. I'm not proposing we do that, but I just would remind our fellow board members, we could do that if a problem arises.
Okay, anyone else? Otherwise, I'll call for the roll. Is Jack talking?
Kemp,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Kolars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes, it passes. Thank you. On to the tax levy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the 2021 tax levy resolution, attached is a resolution setting the Nicollet County property tax property tax levy for 2021 at $23,782,117 or a 2.99% levy increase. The county board held a truth and taxation meeting on December 3rd where the budget and levy were presented. I will just go through a few of the items that were presented that night regarding our overall budget and levy. Significant changes driving the 2.99% increase. For 2021, it really is nearly entirely in salary, wages, and benefits. As a county government, we're a service organization, and so we have our largest investment in human capital. Over 53% of our total budget is wages, benefits, and staffing. So the levy increase primarily is being driven by that. The county is electing to or proposing to delay a couple capital projects in light of the pandemic and economic uncertainty that we face in the next couple of years. We are planning to delay a remodeling project at our Health and Human Service building in North Mankato and government center remodel for property and public services. Just a few other items related to the levy. Our overall property tax levy average increase the last 10 years has been 4.33%. So at 2.99%, we are under our 10-year average. What is the impact of a 2.99% levy increase? For a home valued at $150,000 in Nicollet County and with no value increase, they would see a $38 increase in their county property taxes. Home valued at that same amount with a 5% increase would see an $86 increase in county taxes. And we have a significant decrease in value in ag lands for 2021. Our ag land values went down 17%. So those owning ag land will largely see a decrease in county taxes. For example, if you own 80 acres of homestead tillable, your taxes on that piece of property would go down approximately $191. So overall, for the whole levy, who's paying what percentage of it? In 2021, under the proposed levy, 55% would be paid by residential property, 28% by agricultural property, 15% by commercial and industrial, and 2% by utilities. We had a shift, as I mentioned, ag land values have went down 17%. So last year, for current year 2020, residential property picked up 51% of the total county tax levy. That will now be shifting up to 55%. And in comparison with the ag land value decrease, ag land for 2020 was paying 32% of the total tax bill. For 2021, that will shift down to 28%. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. There is a resolution in your packet to approve the proposed levy as presented.
Questions for Ryan?
Mr. Chair, I'll move it. Jack Colars.
Morrow second. Or Kemp second, anyone.
Whichever.
We have a second. Personally, I'd like to see it more like 2.5, but I understand the budgeting process, and Ryan is probably on track to kind of keep us even without draining our reserves, without a major project coming along right now. So is there any other discussion? We have a second.
Mr. Chair, just to thank the Budget Committee and staff for your work on this. Appreciate it.
Okay, no discussion. Call the roll, please.
Kemp,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Colars,
Yes.
Lipke.
Yes, it passes. Ryan, budget resolution?
So the 2021 budget resolution is included in your packet. It shows a total budget of $46,295,129. That is a 1.3% increase from the 2020 budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, the resolution is included for your approval.
Morrow will move the resolution.
Semple second.
We have a motion and a second. Ryan, what is the figure that comes from our property tax out of that? Or don't you have it handy?
So that's the first number of 23,782,117.
Okay, thank you. Any more discussion or questions?
Ryan, could you just speak to, just briefly, the dollars and the percentage of the budget that was impacted the most significantly for our 2021 budget?
Yeah, it's fairly similar to the 2020 budget. Property tax revenues are accounting for a little over 50% of the total budget. State and federal funding is always our next most highest revenue producing sources. We have seen some increase in health and human service revenues in the last couple of years as we try to make an effort to increase those revenues. Our county program aid has remained consistent the last couple of years. There is concern that with the state budget deficits forecasted the next couple of years that could be impacted, and so that would have an impact on future property taxes. Our sales and wheelage tax, that has remained very steady. Actually, we've increased that budget. I've been tracking the sales tax collections through the pandemic, and we're actually on par or ahead of 2019 sales tax collections. So those revenues have remained very stable and have not been impacted by the pandemic.
Ryan, that's kind of interesting in a way. I mean, do you have any idea how much of that sales tax is from bars and restaurants?
No, I don't have a detailed breakdown.
Okay. Any questions for Ryan? Yes, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ryan, two related points about the budget. Given the amount of, I don't want to say additional service, let's just say pandemic-related costs. I think, this whole board, we've gone through an extensive budget process that culminates in today. And at times you've described the federal assistance that the county received in order to help folks in 2020. I assume that that's reflected in part in our ability to have balanced the budget, and going forward into 2021, I anticipate that federal assistance may be necessary again in 2021 to continue to help businesses such as the bars and restaurants that John just mentioned, to help individuals and to protect the health and safety of Nicollet County residents.
That's correct, Commissioner Morrow. It's not reflected in this budget, but the county did receive over $4 million of federal CARES dollars. Of that, we put about $1.5 million back out into the community. It sounds like we were going to be receiving over $600,000 from the state of Minnesota for business assistance. And I anticipate additional federal funding being needed in 2021. As, with the vaccine here now, we as a service provider in the public health area will be involved with the pandemic for all of 2021, and will likely be looking for ways to assist our business owners and individuals in the community as we go through this.
That's Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ryan, I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I think you got that wrong. I don't think we put 1.5 back into the community. I think all of it went back to the community in the sense that we hired additional staff. Our health and human services folks have had to, we have had to increase staff, increase hours, increase services. We've seen that across the board. We've had to make our own buildings safe, and that for the right reason, so that we continue to provide the services that our county depends upon. So Ryan, I'm going to ask you, I think all that money went to helping the folks of Nicollet County, both in direct grants and indirectly through the services that we provided that were pandemic related.
Thank you, Terry. We're very well spoken.
Yeah, you're correct, Mr. Morrow. The 1.5 million was just direct cash we put back, but we did spend the full 4.1 million on, just as you mentioned, staffing, public health response, and many other things related to the pandemic. So yeah, in reality, the whole share was put back for the taxpayers' purposes.
We have to vote yet, right?
Yeah.
Anything else before we vote? Okay, Sarah, call the roll, please.
Kemp,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Colars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes, thank you. Passes. Okay, chair's report. Did a Zoom meeting on the Lower Minnesota thing where Marie is the primary person and I'm the alternate. Had a Zoom for the soil and water. Went to the tax levy meeting, or that was Zoom also, and AMC. So, Terry?
Thank you, John. We've had adult chemical welfare meetings, or that group, AQUA. I always forget the acronym, I apologize. AMC, you mentioned the tax meeting as well.
Denny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see, since our last gathering, we had our education huddle with the county attorney's office, South Central EMS, our budget and tax levy hearing, obviously, our AMC annual, my SECB finance committee, and MRCI finance committee and board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Marie?
I had the Food Access Network. All of my meetings have been Zoom. The Food Access Network met, and we press released the fact that 10,000 plus individuals received food items and food support over the course of the summer. And I believe they have one more distribution on the 17th, and they always need volunteers. Region 9 Board of Directors meeting, the One Watership, One Plan meeting was also Zoom. The Truth and Taxation hearing, the AMC annual meeting, and that's primarily it. Some various correspondence regarding 7 Mile Creek with users and public works staff.
Jack?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the tax meeting, I thought a really efficient AMC annual meeting, even though we didn't get to stuff our stockings up with the vendors who always come to those events. That was lost on, so the grandkids aren't getting anything this year, I guess. RETA meeting and ATP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
Mr.
Also
Chair, if I might.
Yes, Terry.
I apologize. I missed one meeting that the board should be aware of. We had a recycling subcommittee meeting of LeSueur County, Sibley County, and us. I believe that we will be bringing to the board eventually potentially significantly revised budget and approach, thinking of some new ideas, new approaches. The subcommittee is gonna meet again in January before the Tri-County Board votes and then brings a budget forward.
Thank you, Terry. And I also went to the Lafayette Fire Department fundraiser and waited in line for 45 minutes. So they had a very good turnout. So, motion to adjourn, or is there anything else, Ryan?
Do you have any other going forward meetings and conferences? I think everything we had is already scheduled, don't we?
Right. The legislative conference will be virtual for AMC at the end of February, so that we'll get more information on that, but that is it for right now.
So everything
We'll
else
make a motion to approve per diems and expenses.
So moved, or sorry, second, please. Sorry. Need a motion.
Second. Morrow.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll for per diems and expenses.
Kemp,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Colars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes. Michelle, you had a question?
I just wanted to let the board know, kind of to follow up on what Commissioner Kemp had indicated regarding the education meeting, just to let the board know that we just completed meetings between probation, human services, my office, and individually with each of the school districts to just talk about ways that we can continue to meet the needs of families and students as they kind of process through both distance and hybrid or in-person learning, whichever mode that they happen to be in. And I think they were very productive meetings between all that were involved, and want to take my hat off, quite frankly, to our school districts who continue to try to be innovative to work with families and students as they process through the different learning methods and some really unique methods of motivating students involving some of our local retailers that I'll bring forward in the future about offering some incentives to families. So hats off to all that are working in really all of our fields, but also in our education fields to meet the needs of our students and families. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Anyone else, or otherwise, is there a motion to adjourn the main meeting?
Kemp will move the adjournment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Call the roll, please.
Kemp,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Colars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes, passes, and we will now take a 10-minute break.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd recommend we take a 10-minute break.
We'll reopen the public part of the Drainage Authority. County Ditch 62A Improvement Project and litigation is up. Is there any wishes out there? Anyone want to lead the discussion?
This is Roger Justin, and I would look for the board to make a motion in relation to some outstanding invoices from ISG in relation to County Ditch 62A, that there were overruns on the estimates of ISG's fees due to the increased work because of the breaches of Hutton in performing the contract. And I would ask that a motion be made to pay ISG the sum of $51,935.99.
Kemp will make the motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Dremel will second.
Thank you, Marie. Any discussion? Call the roll, please. Sarah?
Commissioner Kemp,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Colars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Reluctantly, yes. Passes. Thank you. Is there anything else?
Nothing else, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Kemp makes the motion.
I'll make a second to that. Any more discussion? Call the roll, please.
Kemp,
Yes.
Morrow,
Yes.
Drano,
Yes.
Colars,
Yes.
Lipke,
Yes. Passes, adjourned. Thank you.
Have a good holiday.
Happy holidays.